Aloha and welcome to my garden. My name is Konia and I live on the southernmost tip of the United States on the island of Hawaii on this lava flow of 1907. This land and its flora are a never-ending inspiring source for my work and for my designs. I have the deep desire to preserve and perpetuate the art of the traditional Hawaiian quilting and teach it in the tradition of my two instructors and master quilters, Mrs. Marjorie Kerr and Mrs. Deborah Kakalia, to whom I'm forever grateful. Before we get to work, let me give you a brief history of how the Hawaiian quilt came to be. No one says it better than Auntie Debbie in her book, Hawaiian Quilting as an Art. Let me read. All the reference books on Hawaiiana agree that quilting was first brought to Hawaii in April of 1820 when the first missionary ships from New England arrived at Kailua Kona. 4 native women of distinction were invited aboard to participate in the first sewing circle under Hawaii's beautiful skies. The first quilts made in Hawaii were of the patchwork design, made by patches given by missionaries. However, as time went on, the voluminous Hawaiian dress of the day, the mu'umu'u, was full cut and taking the full width of the material. Thus, there were no scraps. The Hawaiian women, born with much creative and artistic talents, saw no purpose in cutting up big pieces of material to make little pieces, to sew back together again into a big piece. The most popular story of the creation of the Hawaiian quilt tells that on a day when one Hawaiian lady put a piece of sheeting to bleach on the grass, the branches of a tree had etched their shadows onto the white background, making an intricate and beautiful design. The lady thought it was so beautiful that she decided to copy it on her red material, cutting and appliquing it onto the white background. And thus the Hawaiian quilt was born. When you first see a full-size Hawaiian quilt, it will leave you with an unforgettable feeling of the love and creativity of the Hawaiian people. Let's take a quick look at some quilts that I have made or acquired for the Ritz-Carlton Resort at Maunalani. Here we are at the Ritz-Carlton at Maunalani. This quilt was designed by my teacher, Mrs. Kakalia, and its name is the Royal Symbols, depicting Kapiolani's crown, the kahili, the royal standards, the Queen's fan, and the Georgian crown, all surrounded by maile. Maile is a very fragrant vine that grows in the mountains and is widely used by royalty as leis. This quilt took me approximately 900 to 950 hours from beginning to completion, and it's a queen-size quilt. This quilt came from Oahu. It is a lovely gray on pink, and the name of the design is ohelo berry. The ohelo berry is sacred to our fire goddess, Madame Pele. It grows in the mountains, and is said when you get harvesting the berries, you must offer the first berry to Madame Pele, and then it's okay for you to partake. This quilt is one of my favorites. It also came from Oahu, and it depicts 2 leis. The hibiscus, which is our Hawaii state flower, and this lei is made from the fruit of the lauhala or pandanus tree. This striking red on white quilt is covered with poinsettia flowers. The poinsettia flower grows profusely on our islands from about November till way after Christmas. Would you like to make one of these lovely pieces? Hele mai, come with me. I'll show you how. Now let's go to work. Whether you work with a big quilt or a small piece, the principle is always the same. Today we will do a 22-inch wall hanging. My anthurium flowers inspired me to do this pattern. Traditional Hawaiian quilts are done with 2 contrasting solid colors, preferably 100% cotton fabric, and traditional cuts are done on the 8th fold. Here are our 2 pieces of fabric, a 22-inch square for the background and an 18-inch square for the motif. Please pre-wash your fabric to avoid shrinking and color bleeding. Now let's go to the ironing board. Make sure the grain lines run in the same direction. The crosswise grain has more give than the lengthwise grain. I put both pieces next to each other so that I won't make a mistake. Now we iron. Fold the piece in half. Watch that your grains are straight. Press. Fold it in a 1/4. Make sure these are very precise. Press again. And hold where the 2 pieces are. Put your finger there. Fold up into that 1/8 that we were talking about earlier in the class. And press. Do the same thing with your background piece. Now we place the pattern onto the motif fabric, watching carefully the center, the straight fold, and the bias line, and trace carefully all the way around, going into each crevice and into each line as your pattern tells you. Remove the pattern and pin inside each pencil line. I like to start here where the 4 fold lines meet and be very exact so that your finished product will come out perfect. So pin inside each pencil line, and that will hold the fabric together while we have to cut through all 8 layers. Hold your hand underneath so you won't cut anything that may be hanging down, and start cutting on the pencil lines very carefully, holding all 8 pieces together. If it's easier for you, you can lie it flat, but I found it's much simpler if you hold it in your hands like this. And then just keep cutting and cutting until you have cut all the pencil lines. Be careful not to cut on the fold lines unless it says so on your pattern. This is a very exacting process. Bear with me. We'll get it done. Unfold your background square and place the motif onto the background square, watching the folds that we creased so that it will all match. That's why we put those creases on. Now here's one more time. This is a very exacting process, and it takes a little while, and on a big quilt it takes a very long while. So bear with me again, because we have to match all these lines. And let me just do a quarter for you now. Now when all this is laid out carefully, don't pull on it. just pat gently and match all the creases that we ironed in, and keeping the grains straight. Remember when we ironed very carefully and made sure that the grain lines were all in the same direction. Now, here is our pattern completely laid out. We made sure that the spacing is all the same and that the pattern's touch were required. And now we pin it all. Inside each flower and inside each line, don't lift the fabric, just put the needle in and out. Because if you lift this up, everything will shift, and that won't be very good. So just carefully place the pins. Don't be skimpy on that. Put as many pins in to hold it all securely in place. Now we have to thread baste it on. I like to use a long needle. About a ½ inch from all raw edges inside the raw edge. Put your needle down and pull it up. Don't lift it here. Just put the needle in and pull up. And then you have to go all the way around and into each corner. I hope you can see this, how I do this here. See, go in and come up. And in and up. Keep doing this until you have the whole pattern securely fastened to the background fabric. Now we have finished basting and we're ready to applique. You will need number 11 or 12 sharps needles and thread to match your motif. Use a good cotton-covered polyester thread. Take your thread as it comes off the spool and thread your needle. Don't make it too long, just about below your elbow is a good measure, and make a small knot. Here is a cute knot. Take the long end of your thread and put it on your index finger. Put the needle on top, wrap twice, hold, and pull through. I'll show you again. The long end of the thread goes on the index finger, needle on top, wrap twice, hold, and pull through. This makes a very nice, always even, small knot. I have already done the center, my logo. It's sort of a 4-leaf good luck design. You can change it if you don't like it and put any center cut in you prefer. Reach in all the way to the center, keep your thumb on top. Have the raw edge of the motif facing you and work from right to left. Don't start at a corner or a valley. Those are the difficult spots. So let's start on the flat here. Put your needle in from underneath, about an 1/8 inch from the edge. Pull through and turn the fabric under an 1/8 inch with your needle. And put your thumb on top again and make the tiniest overcast stitches you can master. You go in right where your thread came up, about 1 thread deep into the red fabric, and pull. Don't pull too tight, but snug. Again, here's where your thread came up, and you go below into the background fabric, right underneath, come up 1 thread deep, and through. The smaller the stitches, the better. In Hawaiian, this stitch is called tuwili. Now, I show you a few more so that you can watch how I am turning it with a needle. Turn with a needle, hold it, always be careful you have your eighths, flatten, smooth with your thumb, come right down where your thread came up, one thread deep into the fabric, and pull. Now wheelie along until you get to the corner, and then I show you how to do the corner. Now we're at the point, and we stopped 1/8 inch from the point. Turn your work a little bit. Open it up, put your thumb there. Fold the tip down and all the way over to the side. Push your thumb there, turn, and with your needle, fold the point under to make this nice sharp point. Put one stitch on top into the point, two more down the side, push, and now we straighten this out, not from the tip down, but towards the tip, again using the 1/8 inch turn under. See how this needle helps you? It is really your best friend in this kind of work. And we wheelie along until we get to a valley. Now we're at a valley, and again we stopped approximately 1/8 inch from the lowest part of the valley. It's impossible to turn the fabric under 1/8 inch here, so we do the best we can. And how we do this is we push with the flat of the needle and we roll with the thumb. Push and roll. And I show you again. Push with the flat of the needle and roll. You may have to do this several times, but be careful that you don't fray the fabric. In order to finish this valley, we have to pack in as many stitches and as small as you can possibly master and as close together as you can possibly do it. Don't try and cut. It won't help. Come in about 2 threads deep and pack in 4, 5, maybe even 6 stitches to keep it from fraying through many washings. It is so sad to see a finished piece where attention has not been given to this part and it's all frayed out. Now, turn your work around and again fold under 1/8 of an inch, not from the valley, but towards the valley. Smooth with your needle and your thumb and wheelie happily along all the way. And we will come back when you have finished appliquing this piece. Knotting off is done on the reverse side. You put your needle in, turn your work around, pick up a couple of threads only of the background fabric and make a knot and wiggle the thread between the layers and cut it off right here. When all applique is finished, remove the basting.
Stop.
and press lightly only on the back. Now we're ready to quilt. In Hawaiian, that's called tukuiki. You need a 14-inch hoop, better yet an 18-inch hoop. It gives you more pattern vision. Batting, I prefer the 3-ounce or medium kind. A backing piece, this could be muslin or the same as your background piece, or it could even be a print. To assemble, you have to work on a flat surface. Put the background piece first, wrong side up if it's a print, then the batting, and then your applique piece, smoothing out gently. Make sure there are no wrinkles or anything. And now we're ready to baste again. Start in the center, baste the straight lines first, and then the diagonal. Again, put the needle in, pull it up. Don't lift any of this, just put it in and pull it up, put it in and pull it up. Some of my students prefer to work with a spoon. Needle in, spoon goes here, scoop the needle. Needle in, spoon goes here, scoop up. Whichever method you prefer is fine. I find it goes much faster without the spoon. So as I said, do all the straight lines first and then the diagonals. I also like to baste 4 strips of scrap fabric all the way along the outside edge. And you will see why. It will hold the hoop when you get out to the corner securely into place. Otherwise, you would have this hole here and it wouldn't be so nice and tight. Put the sandwich in the hoop. And keep a good tension. Not too tight and not too loose. Run your hand underneath it all the way around to make sure there are no wrinkles. When the piece is securely in the hoop, remove the basting. This work was not in vain. We needed it to keep it all together. In the traditional way, you would use white thread, but my teachers say it's perfectly okay to use the same color thread as your motif in the background. I will use white so you can see better. If you do a big quilt, I recommend quilting thread, but for this small wall hanging, the cotton-covered polyester will be just fine. Take your thread again as it comes off the spool and make the small knot. Start about 1/2 inch away from the edge and slide your needle in between the layers and come up real close to the edge of your motif fabric. Pop the knot through. Don't pull too hard so it pops out here again, just till it hits. And you are ready to quilt. Right along the outside edge of the motif. Now let me show you. The quilting stitch is not a running stitch. It's more like an up and down rocking stitch. Let me show you as best as I can what happens underneath the hoop. The needle rests here. Only the thimble holds the needle. The thumb pushes in front. You lie the needle down, and this index finger pushes up from behind. Now, this is how it will work. Put the needle in till you can feel it on your index finger. And I might mention here that don't hold the hoop on the outside. Slide your hand underneath and pretend it's a table. So here we are. The needle hits the index finger, and only the thimble hits the needle. The rest of the fingers, let them fly. Don't hold your needle like this. You won't get anywhere. Again, put the needle in. Thimble hits the needle. Thumb goes in front. Lie the needle down and make a stitch and rock. Now at the beginning, you may only be able to do one stitch at a time. One stitch at a time. Let me show you over here so where you can see a little better. Needle in, pick up, rock, and up. Initially, you will have to practice till you get the motion and get the feel of it. Just keep watching how I do this. Needle goes in, thumb goes in front, and rock. Be patient, practice this for a while, and it will come. Also, when you are able to do more than one stitch, you can look on your needle and make sure that all the stitches are the same. Make the tiniest stitches that you can master, again, just like with the applique. But even if you cannot make small stitches, and let me show you over here again so you can see what the quilting stitch looks like close. Make them bigger. Bigger stitches are okay, they're beautiful. Just make sure they're all uniform. Now, quilt around, all the way around the motif first. Then do the motif itself, and then move your hoop and work to the outer edge. And this is where our 2 strips of scrap fabric came in handy. And echo the design. This represents the rippling ocean waves of our beautiful ocean that surrounds our beautiful islands. Knotting off is done on the top. Hold up your thread, hold it with your left hand, and make a knot or 2. Hold it up and go into the same hole where your thread came out and wiggle it between the layers. Come up and pop it through. Did you hear it pop? Now you can cut it off. Again, let me repeat. Work on one hoopful at a time. First, outlining the motif, then quilting the motif, then echoing the pattern outward, representing the ocean waves of Hawaii. The traditional way of Hawaiian quilting would use the echo quilting on the inside of the motif. But sometimes I like to use the Western way of quilting, like on this pineapple, emphasizing veins of leaves or shapes of fruit like on this pineapple. Quilting rows should be no less than 1/2 inch and no more than 3/4 inch apart. When finished, Measure your piece carefully from the center out, mark from the center out, and trim evenly on all 4 sides. Now I'll show you how to finish our wall hanging on another piece I am currently working on. I designed this when there was a severe storm, and I call it kaipi'i, or rough water. For the binding for our wall hanging, you can either use bias tape, which will make the corners slightly rounded, or I prefer for wall hangings a straight piece of tape so that you can miter the corners. Let me show you. I prefer to sew the strip 1/5/8 inch to the back first, and we sew with 1/4 inch seam allowance until we get to within 1/4 inch of the corner. Okay, here we are, 1/4 inch before the seam. Take your fabric strip and fold it up to make a diagonal. Fold it down on the other side, creating this triangle. Now this is a little tricky. Fold the triangle over again, go down, come up through the same stitch you just went down, but on the other side of the triangle. Don't stitch into the triangle. Leave it free. And sew with the same 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way across till you get to your next corner. Now we have to turn the piece over, fold your binding, turn it down, and sew with tiny overcast stitches until you come to the corner. When you are at the corner, hold it straight out, fold it over. See how nicely this corner miters, and take a stitch. Now you can tack this miter with the tiniest invisible stitches. Don't need many, just 2 or 3 to hold it together. Let's do one more. Run your thread underneath, come out right here, and continue with the small overcast stitches until you're all the way around. See? Makes a nice mitered corner. Well, we're almost finished. You can either sew a sleeve to the back so you can push a rod through, or you can do, like on this piece, sew tabs to the top and your rod would go in like that. Or you can sew a zipper to the back, after, of course, you put an extra piece of material on there, and stuff it as a pillow. Or some of my clients like to have a beautiful piece like that matted and framed as a picture. Pau ka papa, as the Hawaiians say, the class is over. I hope you have enjoyed this lesson and have gained a deeper understanding and appreciation for the traditional way of Hawaiian quilting, and that you will create many beautiful heirlooms for your family and friends and honor the Hawaiian people who so freely share their love and creative talents with us. I greet you with a Hawaiian goodbye. Aloha, ahui ho, and may the spirit of aloha and God's blessings always be with you.